Okay, these are some more development notes for game synSpace Drum Runners for Android in the Google Play Store and for the Kindle Fire HD. I'm recording today on a Kindle Fire HD 10-inch. So, quick review, it's a space game, you fly around, you shoot things, players come in, you fight them, you play with them, you get power-ups, you get ship extensions, you can connect to a different server, you can launch a drone, you can personalize your face, your ship, you can chat, you can do a certain amount of voice chatting and musical analysis, and you can play the piano, and you can see the oscilloscope, and you can use the synthesizer to pick a different instrument. Anyway, so you do that, and then you have a multi-track recorder basically. And you can look at what you did, and you can edit notes, you can delete them, you can record a second track, you can change instruments, and you can record loops where you pick an instrument and you unlock the loops. And I'll record loop 1. I'll just record this instrument. Normally I'd be, drums or something. And then the idea is you do something rhythmically interesting. There's so much more you can do with this. I'm just doing something really quick, but basically a 15 loops. And each loop is a 16-note pattern, basically. And I'm doing a very poor job. Okay, so now I go over here and I start recording again. And you're always playing along with the stuff that was there before. So I didn't play anything, but I'm still recording. So I go over to loops and I start a loop. So this is going into my recording. I start a different loop. And so I start the loops and combinations, and I've filled the loops with things that go together well. And then I can just kind of change the pattern. Anyway, you get the idea. And so I showed you can multi-track record, you can see the piano roll, you can edit. There's some special commands and such that are documented elsewhere. Oh, I didn't show you the synthesizer, actually. So you make these instruments. So this instrument, it uses 3 oscillators, but these little blue lines tell me that it's in FM synthesis mode. So this is the carrier, so oscillator 3 is the only one we're actually hearing. But oscillator 2 is modulating the frequency of oscillator 3, and oscillator 1 is modulating the frequency of oscillator 2. If I increase the amount of modulation, It's being driven by this output pulse. So let's give it sort of a let's give it just a little bit of vibrato. That's good, seasick. It's flying saucer time. Let's turn the FM off. Let's go back to oscillator 1. Again, it's modulating the modulator. Let's make it a square wave. That's kind of nice. Let's distort it. Let's change its relative frequency. Right now it's 28 half steps above whatever note I'm hitting on the piano. I'm sorry, I'm not a musician. Just a wannabe. Perfect fifth. Go down an octave. Oh, I can't. Go up an octave. See, that's one thing about my synthesizer. I do a lot of stuff, you know, like in half steps, so it's always in tune, so to speak. If you need to make a harmonic and you don't know what it is in half steps, this 19 half steps is 3 times the bass frequency, so this is the third harmonic. You can't just type in a 3, but you can tap until you get to the number you want. Like, you want the 5th harmonic? Okay, it must be about there. So I can't get it exactly, but it's pretty close. What's that sound like? A concertina? Some sort of an accordion-y kind of thing. Anyway, so I didn't mean to digress into that, but I haven't actually played with that for a while, so that's nice. So you got a bunch of instruments that you've made or collected. These are collectibles. When you play, you get the ones made by other people if you want them. And sometimes even if you don't want them. It promotes collection. There's some special effects like reverb. Anyway, this hasn't actually changed in version 1.09. These are the 1.09 development notes. So let's focus on what's new in 1.09. Mainly the Super Fun Time Power Show. It sort of overlays the interface. The game is still there. If somebody were to come in, we would see them and the game would behave as normal. But we have no control, I hope. I'm scared to touch because I don't want to find any bugs. So this is basically going to be a background for everything we do, but it's not just a picture. That's actually the game. But it puts this menu bar up on top, and the idea of this menu bar is that I can just add anything I want. So synSpace will never run out of a button ever again. Anyway, so I'm trying to follow, modern trends of instead of X to close in the upper right, it's back arrow to get back to where you were before. But anyway, so that's what that does. So now, and then to give it an excuse, there wasn't any way before where you could, let's say you were in the game and you decided, I kind of feel like designing ship shells. Well, I can't. I kind of have to log off and log back in order to get access to that editor. So for that kind of asset, I thought, it'd be nice to have a sort of a general asset manager kind of thing. And then along the top of here, you would sort of expect to see the names of all the different kinds of assets. Except you'll never see the music assets up here because they already have their own systems that are fully fleshed out. So this is like shells and faces. They already have their own editors, but there's no user interface for you to get to them. Now, I'm going to actually change that. I'm going to make it so that from this screen, at any time, you'll be able to open the editor for these guys. What I want to avoid doing is letting you change your face and ship in the middle of a multiplayer game. Just because I've let you into the editor doesn't mean I have to give you a button to say use this face without having you actually leave the room and come back in. I think is a fair thing to ask. Continuity of identity is good in a 10-minute game. But that's not to say that there couldn't be a star map that said, the whole point of this star map is for you to come back in your renegades. Like everybody's going to have a superhero self and a regular self, and their face will change, as a result of that. You can do a lot of that stuff in Lua. Lua being the scripting language that you can put on your star map. And I hope some of that's legible. So this is what Lua looks like. It's basically tables. So the script window lets you manage your Lua scripts, but you would really, as a star map author, you'd be sitting with a text editor somewhere and a nice keyboard with a big screen and typing a bunch of Lua instructions because you're a programmer. Anyway, it's a neat language, and if anything you can do with synSpace drone runners, you could do, with many other tools that are available to you. And I'm not lobbying for you to use these tools over those. This is just my entertainment to put these tools together in this particular package. And if 1 million people want to pay $1 for it, then that would be great. But as your professional career counselor, you'd be better off learning to use some real tools, unless maybe this gets you interested in those other tools. Maybe you came for the 1980s bitmaps and you stayed for the 1990s FM synthesizer. Super fun time power show. So shells and faces will just take you to the normal editors. I don't even have them wired in yet, even though they would be easy. It's probably embarrassing to not have that already. Star maps is going to be a big thing. There's nothing you can't already do with your text editor on your other computer and then drag the file in. But there are some things like drawing some barrier lines here and there. Just kind of like having a little toolkit and being able to put together the set, the stage that you want to have, the background you want to have for your star map, for some scene in your star map, for some you've been summoned to planet Gickelslack and they've been beset by a horrible disease which makes them all, I don't know, something ironic, red-handed. They need, some green cream from some other planet, and you have to find that other planet, which has been lost for millennia, and you need to find the 7 pieces of the map that take you to the lost planet. And then once you've got the 7 pieces of the map, the script says, okay, they can, it enables you to see the lost planet that you've been flying past, all the time, because this section of space on a particular star map is not really all that large. The way I did it, the way I planned that was, at maximum speed, I wanted it to take a reasonable amount of time to go all the way across the map. Once you get across the map, it wraps, and you're back on the other side, and you come back. This project is a convenient place for me to develop a lot of little gigas that I want to put into my Well of Souls Rune Runners game, where I want it to be able to, you sit down with a text file and you type in some Lua and you do. But it needs a different kind of asset. So instead of just you being represented by a ship shell or a face, you're going to have to be represented by an actual 3D mesh on an animated skeleton. And while I'm not, and both those things should be done, in Blender. Straight up, I think that's probably, it's free, it's powerful. It's really good. You should just learn Blender and use that for stuff. And I will ultimately support import from Blender created files, because I was doing that with Rocket Club, and I think I'll just continue doing it the same way, basically. So I'll probably just stick with the milkshake format if there's not some other feature that I really want that it doesn't have. There's going to be this new asset in town, and it'll be another collectible, and it's called a critter. The idea of a critter is, on the one hand, you design a skeleton, and you design a skin, and you design poses, and then you make animations as a sequence of poses. And you make a little rabbit, and you give him 10 animations, one of which is, they all have an animation of how they walk. So there's a walk cycle. And they may have some specialty other locomotion modes, like a bird character might have a flying cycle, and a fish character might have a swimming cycle. Everybody might have a swimming cycle. In Rocket Club, I broke it down into 64 pose slots, and I'm just imitating that here. And then the animations can be from any blend of any poses to any other blend of any other poses. And it just slurps quaternions to do the actual animation, which I don't have in here yet, but will do soon. This is an asset, the critter asset, that is not really needed in synSpace, but is strongly needed in Well of Souls. And in addition to defining the skeleton and the poses and the animations, it has a kind of animation which I don't know if it deserves a different name or not, but basically it doesn't stop. All by itself. The host says, create me a critter object and load it up with this critter asset, and then stick it in the world at this location. And as far as the host is concerned, it's still at that XYZ exactly. But once it's in a behavior pattern, it's allowed to wander some distance from that. And the rules for that are set up by the host, I guess. And the host knows, and the host gets some control over the overall mode of the character, like, is it walking, is it swimming, that kind of thing. Because only the host knows if that part of the world is underwater. So, and I want them to be handling a certain simple physics where there's weights at the ends of all the joints. And so when they play an animation, or when the host says, well, they're walking at this speed in this direction, all of their joints develop velocities and momentum. And then when a subsequent animation or command tries to alter the direction of a joint, it's going to be resisted by that momentum, just enough that the joints are just a little laggy. And what I want to do is I want to make it so that if I do have a canned animation that's just, foot, plod, 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 that it doesn't just look like it's exactly the same thing over and over again. That maybe it develops oscillations in, resonant frequencies to the walk. And Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to compute the center of mass of all of the mass points at all the joints. And then I'm going to just keep track of which joints are in ground contact. So let's say in the simple case we have 2 feet. I was just going to do and say each foot that's got ground contact, I'm going to draw a little circle, a little shadow, a little circle on the ground around it. And if you've got 2 feet on the ground, then you've got 2 little circles. And the circles are big enough that for a normal standing gait they would overlap. And then I compute the center of mass and cast its shadow on the ground. And so long as its shadow is inside the ground contact shadow, then I deem the pose to be stable, and I don't have to do anything. But even a stable pose, each joint angle, I can tell its deviation from the rest pose. And I can say, I'm most comfortable in the rest pose. So if I'm going to be standing here for a long time, I'm going to try and adjust my body until eventually I'm in, the rest pose. So that kind of optimization is also pulling against the animations that are being triggered by the host saying, well, no, I need you to walk over there. That means you're going to have to synthesize standing up and turning around and walking over there. But I want the host basically to just be able to say, go over here, go over there. You're now walking at 5 miles an hour. You're now doing this. And then I want the critter to say, I have some awareness of how big I am, and therefore what 5 miles is, and how long an hour is, and how big my stride is, because I've measured it in my animation, so I know it exactly. And so I'll just move my feet such that they are in contact with the ground that is moving beneath me at 5 miles an hour, and it won't look like I'm ice skating. And you, the host, won't have to worry about it. When you want to render me, you just make a call into the critter that controls me, the critter object that controls me, and I will pose. I will return an array of matrices that you can then hand to OpenGL or whatever your rendering system is, and use to do the multi-bone weighting of a real, high-resolution skin mesh onto this skeleton and posed as it should be for this moment in this particular animation. Wait, so that's where I want to get to. So where once you've designed the critter, it is a living little object with its own little critter brain, making certain decisions on its own within the envelope of you are allowed to do this provided by the host. And but mainly the host has a little remote control with a handful of buttons on it, and he can push them to say attack, 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 defend, defend, attack, 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 defend, defend, or that kind of thing, so that you can make a little game without, so that I can make a little game without having to redo all that stuff each time. So within the world of this critter, my plan is you have the skeleton screen where you define the skeleton. You have the skin screen where you multi-bone weight or something. I don't know. We'll see. You have the pose screen, and this is, don't be confused here, where you actually define and save these 64 poses, which are stored with the skeleton in the asset, in the critter asset in question. And when I save this or clone it, it will become critter asset with an ID tag that means this skeleton, these poses, these animations, these quirky behavioral traits. And I don't think there'll be Lua inside of this guy, although that would be the coolest, and I won't rule it out. But definitely I want to be sure that Lua can push those same buttons on the remote control that the host can push. I mean, Lua will ask the host to please push those buttons for it. And then the animation panel, it will have an animation timeline. Oh, the pose panel will have some sort of a selector of the 64 pose slots. And basically you're just editing one of the pose slots, and you slide back and forth and pick a different pose slot. Now you're editing that, and there'll be some copy and paste and stuff like that. And then animation adds the animation timeline, where basically you drag the individual poses into the timeline and, adjust the time. And the idea is at that moment in the timeline, the character will look like that pose. But immediately before it and immediately after it, it will have been morphing from the previous pose or towards the next pose. Okay, and so back to the skeleton editor, and I'm going to edit it for real in a second here, but I don't want to disturb this pose right now. Notice that it's not a very great pose. The shoulder bones aren't equal length. There's a lot of things that aren't particularly equal length. But where did it come from? Well, one of the things that you can do now, as of yesterday, is you can have a background. So normally in the pose editor, you'd be looking at something like this. And just to actually get this out of the way, if you push the VR button and then put on your red blue glasses, then you get a real 3D experience. Ooh, whoops. Still got some bugs there. Okay, and now we turn that off. But this BG0 means I'm using background 0. So you'll recall that we were playing a game and that the dots, the stars and such of the game are still there. This square here is our animation stage, and this is our animation skyline, which, you know, I don't really need. Maybe I do. It tells me how. There's some number of meters between there, but I don't remember how many. The red vector, red, green, blue, or XYZ. So the default way of looking at this would be X, Y, and Z. Right, up, back. But anyway, so say you wanted to make a new pose. So you've made the skeleton, and now you're in the pose system, and you just pose the skeleton. So now you just are adjusting joint angles, and you're not, bone lengths aren't allowed to change anymore. Now I can go back and change the skeleton after I've made some poses, but those poses are all going to be affected, and so you want to kind of get your skeleton right. And I might even add like locks, so you lock the skeleton, or you lock individual poses, or, you know, like if a pose is really important to a bunch of different animations, maybe you lock it so that you don't just casually change it. So if I go to background 1, first, if you tap on the background button, it just toggles between the different backgrounds. And you notice that for each background, you can see a version of the skeleton. That's just this same skeleton, although it's being rendered more simply as just lines. You can still turn it. It's just the same skeleton. It's not a picture of a skeleton. But the thing behind it on the wall, that is just a picture. So the idea is you start with a biped skeleton, and then using these 3 pictures, you try to deform it until it looks like, until it lines up. And so I spent a few minutes doing this last night, and this is what I got. And I think the thing to point out at the end of the day is you're the poser. You're designing a pose. It needs to look good to you. You may take some inspiration from something like this, but first of all, you're never going to get data this good. This is 3 different photos of the exact same creature in the exact same pose from 3 different angles. So this is like, you know, doesn't get any better. And I don't know, you know, I mean, obviously this isn't my skin, this isn't my mesh, I have no rights to it, and this is for example only. My thought is, for all practical purposes, you would have a friend or yourself pose and then shoot pictures from several different angles, and like, you know, front, back, sides, but try to hold the camera really level. Try to keep the horizon really horizontal. And then they're just photos, and you either took them on the device or you dragged them onto the device with your USB cable or whatever you do to move photos around. On this guy, if I long press instead of just tapping, it will load whatever photo. Right now it's hardwired to a name on the disk, on on the USB drive. So if I wanted it, well, it's not loaded automatically. So in fact, what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to start from scratch, and we're going to try to reduplicate this effort just to see what it's like. So let's do exactly that. Let's shut down. Goodbye. Let's start again. Okay, so we, let's see, let's be a different color. Let's be red. Oh, and let's get rid of the background as much as we can. Super Time Fun Show, Critters, Skeleton, and we'll look at the poses, and we have to select a joint for the control to appear. We're on background 0. There's never a background for background 0. Background 0 is no background. Okay, background 1 appears to be blank right now. Partially it's blank because I haven't set the camera yet. Each background has its own camera, so I have my own zoom. If I long press, it's going to go off and load the file from disk. Okay, and so this is what the front, here's the next picture, which is from the back, and then the third picture, which is from the side. But let's try and get all 3 cameras configured first, because that's what I kind of learned. So the feet are that way. So is this a totally side view? I guess it could be. Again, let's assume that the artist wanted a side view also. So let's put that in the center. But the idea is that you've taken 3 pictures of your cat doing something cute, and yeah, it didn't move much between the pictures, but it moved enough that it's never going to line up perfectly. So I'm fussing with this one because it should line up perfectly, and thus it's a good exercise in whether or not the tool allows you to match something perfectly. But you should not fixate on having something line up perfectly. Instead, you should be making something that you like. Oh, am I still in VR? Oh, I didn't remember. I thought I turned that off. Okay, so these are my camera angles. Okay, first of all, I didn't do that one yet. Okay. So again, I need feet coming forward, and it looks like, I don't know. If I just do a line between the feet, it looks kind of like that. His body looks more turned than that. And then I need his root in the right place. So his feet things between his feet, I think we've established should be about there. So we zoom a little bit so that his root, I think I've got his root up a little higher than that. Okay, camera 2. Blue line between his feet, root maybe at that place. Blue line between his feet, root at that place. Okay, so next let's adjust his head. Let's start at the far end. So I'm going to put this in the center of his head, kind of where his eyes might be. And this is our control. So this is what the pose looks like so far. And this is its own camera, so I like that part. Okay, so move his head. And move his head. Now the question is, if I've got the cameras all right, then if I go through the circle, this head will still be in the right place. See, they're not still in the right place. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do something until this is in the right place, or more in the right place. No, I don't like that. So this guy gets to be a winner. I go to a different guy. Okay, this guy, yeah, I don't necessarily believe in him. So let's shrink him down a little bit. Shrink that down. Like, I think maybe that would be more like that. It would be like that. So, do we have any way of evaluating the pitch? the shoulders are just way wrong. I think I've got his root in the wrong place. Maybe let's... Yeah, that looks more right. And that's pretty high for the root, for sure. Let's bring that down. Okay, PG3. What's his deal? Let's just zoom his head up. Okay, and we'll move the head forward a little. This guy... Maybe zoomed up a little. Okay, just his head. Just his head. Okay. So now we just go in a circle, doing it over and over again. Okay. What can I do instead of what I just did? Move it a little bit that way. That's not bad. Okay, so let's put the neck bone at the, I don't know, the base of the neck. Okay, base of the neck. Base of the neck. Right, that's pretty good. Okay, chest bone. Well, I want it to be in the center of the chest. Now, moving that does risk changing the... Well, I'll just fix that later. Okay. Center of the chest. Well, who knows? Okay, and then that guy, I'm tempted to just leave alone. Okay, the root I have to leave alone. Okay, well, let's move the right knee. I want to be, inside the bone. Inside the right knee. Okay, now, if we have any pitch problems, they're going to be pretty obvious. Move the right knee. And we've just moved the knee, so the bone looks like it got a little longer. But again, we didn't start with the skeleton that was that skeleton. So at the end of this process, we're going to have both a pose and a matching skeleton. So he still looks like a knee. Oh, is this supposed to be the right knee or the left knee? Right knee. No, so this looks wrong. He looks good. Okay, so let's move him halfway. And okay, right knee, right knee, right knee. Head, 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 head. Good enough. Okay, left knee. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Wow. Did I already do left knee? I don't think so. Right knee, right knee. Okay, knees are good. Okay, let's try and do shoulders. Oh, that looks good. Okay, this is still really wrong. So these knees are still pretty good, but what can I do that preserves the knees? I haven't done the feet yet. I should probably do the feet and the other two. So this is number 2. So let's do number 3. A bit more in. So let's do that again. So let's find the that's the left wrist, so I want the left elbow. Left elbow. If I tap to the left or to the right, it steps through the joints, and then the current joint has a little red blur on it. Let's do elbows. Well, let's do hands. Okay. And I like to put it kind of, well, it's the wrist, right? Wrist, that's the left wrist. Can't see the left wrist. Left wrist. Left wrist. Left wrist. So we'll just kind of do this for a while. Okay, it's not getting any better. Okay, so without screwing up the lower body too much. Better? So, I mean, once you have it getting approximately right, then it becomes easier to just do this until it looks like it matches the shape. Okay, how do I feel about right knee? A little low. High. Okay, okay, well, can I make the pieces fit better? Okay, I don't like this guy's version of that, but maybe I don't like the version of the shoulders. Okay, I like this camera. It says the right elbow should be there, and it says the right wrist should be there. I like his knees. I don't like his feet. So let's go to the left toe. Left toe. Left toe. That should be there. And then I need the left ankle. And it should be there. Okay, and then the right ankle and toe look good enough. Okay, so don't change anything. Okay. Interesting how the foot is so different. How is that possible? How could this foot look like this and this? Is it just tipping? Okay, let's do it that way for a minute. Keeping the root in a good place. We're just willing to explore rotations of everybody to just make it all just a little bit better. This guy still seems to have the magic rotation that I probably shouldn't ever change. How am I looking? Okay, well, it's looking kind of zombie. Okay, so if this is our favorite whatever, let's now adjust the toe bone. That's the hand, so is that's the, no, that's got to be the elbow. Yeah, the elbow. Right, I don't have the hand anymore. Okay. Just do them all. mean, the camera's got to be pretty close now. What if I make him a little low? So now they're all a little low. The left shoulder looks a little hunched up. Okay, so let's move the right shoulder a little bit in. Okay, that's actually acceptable. A little bit to his ankle and toe. Ankle and toe. Okay. Ankle's good. And then try to pitch to take it the rest of the way. Okay, and now this guy, right knee. We go halfway, and then we try to pitch to make it a little better. Okay, so we're back here. We're still doing the right knee. He looks okay. He's still a little low, so we'll go up and then pitch to make it a little better. Okay, I'm doing the left elbow. So I think the elbow is around there. Okay, let's do the wrist again. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's nice. Just leave that for a while. Okay. Okay, left elbow. Hard to say. Okay, well, let's just move it out a little bit, but the same height. I'll move this guy all the way to the wrist again. Okay, well, am I done? I don't know, I'm not convinced I couldn't have done just as good a job by just sort of, you know, working to the side. Okay, so now that we're no longer doing that, let's, I'm going to do something while you get your red-green glasses on. We're just going to do a high kick here. I've got the skeleton editor set to translate only right now. Okay. Okay, so check it out. Look at how 3D that looks in red-blue. Oh my god, what's happening? It's kicking me. It's sticking its head up out of the screen, kicking me. I'm scared. Oh, now its foot is deep into the screen. It's not kicking me. Oh no, it's stepping on me. Oh no. Okay, anyway, so snapshot. Sorry, it was a long snapshot. Thank you very much.